What I will tell you is that with posture, there's a lot of misinformation out there, right? And you'll see this all the time with threads online. So read this: if you sit more than 6 hours a day, sitting is destroying your posture, it's destroying your life, etc. Right? And there are a few things that people don't realize. So the first one, the first slide, right, just walking through this one by one, is the image. So people will see this image, and he's a very good marketer, right? So the reason why this image has been used is because a lot of people have this kind of posture, right? So this image is communicating that this is bad and this is good. The problem is that when you look at the spine, not everyone's spine is actually going to facilitate this position. Some people's, it will be this position. Now, what's a healthy position? I apologise, by the way, because I'm just doing this off the cuff, right? What's the best position to be in, or the kind of optimal position in general? Well, it's at mid-muscle lengths. So what that means is it's not a full flexion, it's not a full extension, it's somewhere in between. But that will be different for everyone, yeah? And one of the problems, so I might have told you this before, my left shoulder used to be lower than my right, because I've got mild scoliosis, and there were some other issues as well when I injured my shoulder. But I always used to think, my shoulders aren't back, they're kind of hunched forward. And I always used to try and force them into this backwards position. But the reality is that my structure actually means that my shoulders are slightly hunched, which means when I do flexion, it's not straight up and down, it's actually up and in, and it's down and out as well. So by forcing myself into that position, I was actually causing more pain, because I was trying to go against what my anatomy naturally wanted me to do, right? So just a note. So just to recap, with these two images, it's implying that everyone should be like this on the right. That's not true. Some people can't actually even get into that position, right? So let's quickly look. So a ticking time bomb with a problem that now dramatically improved these 5 habits. Okay, fine. So we discovered through an MRI that my posture was trapping blood in my brain, blocking from flowing properly to my heart. Was I going to have a seizure, a stroke? I don't know. So this is a really good opener. When you think about copyright, and I'm going to include all of this stuff, right, because it might help you understand why he's written it the way that he writes it. So when you look at copywriting structure, you've got pastor is probably what he'll follow here. So you've got problem, amplify, solution, testimony, and offer, response, action. So pastor, let's say pastor instead. So what he's done is he's opened with the hook, the problem. Now he needs to kind of build on that problem, amplify the pain, right? So the problem with a lot of marketing is that it's very black and white, and the reason why is because nuance does not work. It's ineffective. People kind of lose interest because people on social media, because it's a short form platform, they don't want to have to think. Which really frustrates me, but it's just the way that it is. So went on red alert. Oh, there's a big problem here. Discovered through an MRI that my posture was trapping blood in my brain. So I've read the tweets below. I know that this is in part related to his unique makeup, his anatomy, right? But he hasn't mentioned it here. And what that means is that people are going to be very driven to continue reading, because they've seen the previous one-size-fits-all image of left posture bad, right posture good. Then they're going to see, oh, these are the consequences of me having this posture, and it's going to frighten them, and then they're going to keep reading, right? And he's capitalized on that by talking about the seizure, the stroke, etc. No doubt that trapping blood in his brain and stuff like that's a big issue, right? So here we go. So we discovered that I have a genetically narrow internal jugular veins. So is that actually related to his posture alone? So he said, and my bad posture was dangerously cutting off the flow of blood out of my brain and back to my heart. So again, bad posture, it doesn't exist. The posture on its own just means positions, and we get into loads of them. Now, there are some positions that can cause aggravation and issues. So I mentioned earlier about trying to force myself into this position that I wasn't naturally designed to go in. Another really good example for you, and I won't show you this because I'm sat down, but my hip structure is really strange. And when I'm stood up straight in a neutral position, my feet turn out like a duck, right? What's interesting is my external rotation, I can literally point my feet almost behind me. I can't point my feet straight out in front of me. And the reason why is just because, for me, the end of my internal rotation would be my foot pointing in this direction. But if I followed standardized rules and ideals, I'd actually be forcing my hip into a position it doesn't want to go in. And for me, if I'm on a leg extension, I really struggle to get into the right position because I have to hold this end range where the muscle's really short. And some leg extensions will force my hip into a range that actually causes aggravation and all sorts of nasty stuff. So anyway, discover that you're genetically narrow internal jugular veins, bad posture was collecting of blood flow to my brain and back to my heart. Even normal jugular veins, you may be doing the same with poor posture. Where's the evidence of that? I'd want to see it. Because again, is this actually true? I don't know, by the way. This is something I don't know about in terms of whether it would do that. Normal jugular vein, poor posture. You need to define what poor posture means first, because he hasn't done that. All of the postures that I've discussed with you and that people are worried about, very little chance it's going to do that. Normal jugular veins, he may be doing the same. Now, for me, why I think it's been written this way, so I don't know whether Brian's writing this himself or whether he's got a copywriter or a media team, but basically what I see here is he's added some of his story to add credibility. So when he said about, this thing happened to me, here's why, etc., he's gone a little bit more in depth. But by doing that, he's also made the story more specific, which means that there's a possibility that people will start tuning out at this point. So how do you bring them back in to make it relevant to them? Well, you open up the niche, or the niche, if you like, by saying normal jugular veins. So an indirect way of explaining this in another way would be, when I've targeted with my writing, I might have written things for people with general pain and discomfort versus specifically for the shoulder, narrower niche that other people are going to tune out from, versus performance as a whole with exercise mechanics. It can be relevant to a lot more people than if it's injury specific for a number of joints or one joint. Then he said our posture norms are pretty bad. Well, what norms? What does that mean? We slump in our chairs all day. I've got countless studies on Notion that shows this is not a problem whatsoever. It doesn't hurt you anatomically in any way whatsoever. The only way that it could potentially be detrimental to your health is if you're in that chair for a very long period of time, and what that means is that activity is just reduced. So you don't move as much. That's going to be a problem, right? We have really bad habits of looking down at screens on our laps. So why is this a bad habit is the question I would have. Again, I have studies on Notion talking about text neck, so it's a similar thing. And those studies show no correlation in increases of pain symptoms for text neck, sorry. So there's no direct link. In terms of it being a bad habit, we need to understand why he thinks it's a bad habit, because I haven't seen any evidence that it is. Poor posture is normalized. Standardized posture has been normalized. So the idea, so I think we've spoken about this, you've got internal views and external views. So an example, when we talk about the bench press, when I say you need to do full range of motion, you need to do bar to chest, that's an external view. We're looking at the bar and how close it is in space to your chest. It's got no consideration whatsoever for the shoulder joint, yeah? Now, if I assess your shoulder joint and I notice that you've got a certain amount of range, and I say, forget about the bar because it's got nothing to do with your shoulder range, get to this position because that's what we've achieved previously with your shoulder joint, that's an internal view, and that's the view that people should take. So, for example, some people are actually absolutely fine benching bar to chest for a number of different reasons. It could be the shape of their joint, it could be the length of their upper and lower arms. Some people it won't be fine because they actually achieve a different shoulder position. So if you think about having really long arms, well, bar to chest means you're going to be much lower down. Shoulders going to be much more extended. Shoulders are only supposed to extend so far. So that's one reason why people get a lot of pain on bench presses. So normalized posture, standardized posture is what has been normalized, right? Made a boo-boo with the words there. And has all kinds of negative health effects. Okay, so it's been normalized and it has all kinds of negative health effects. Again, I'd want to see the evidence for that, because I think I might have shown you some articles where it talks about posture and stuff like that. Now, in terms of entry level and gen pop slash a popular opinion in the fitness industry, 100%. Everyone says that posture is a problem, right? That there's an ideal posture, and if you don't meet those one size fits all ideals, then it's problematic. When you move further up the chain and you get into the cutting edge information, all of that starts to fall apart. And the reason why I say that, so when you think about information, so you're a critical thinker, right? And you always ask why you sent me this. And when you think about information, so that there are a number of different reasons as to why there's so much misinformation in the fitness industry, right? And in a lot of industries as well. Like you can apply this to markets as well, and think about. I know this isn't completely relevant, but when you think about when people start investing and the decision-making process that they have behind investing versus, when they might have gone through a couple of cycles, and they learn a lot more based on the mistakes that they make. So it becomes less emotional. They start to recognize certain patterns, etc., that they might see. They might learn about different cycles and all that sort of stuff. So with general information, what happens is, firstly, there is groupthink. So because everyone says that X is true, it means that it must be. Or because LeBron James's coaches do this thing with him, he's a professional athlete, it must be true because he does it. It must be effective because he does it. Truth is with, firstly, the groupthink. So with information, if the majority thinks it's usually wrong or outdated or inaccurate. Reason one for that is because of the amount of time it takes for information to circulate. By the time it's fully circulated, so you think about it going to millions of people versus being at the cutting edge where there's like 1% of people that know that information. For it to circulate, by the time it has, there's probably new information that either builds on or disproves the information that's just circulated, right? Then you've got complexity. So one of the biggest barriers to entry when it comes to exercise mechanics, for example, and this isn't uni biomechanics or anything, that's at a much lower level. The main barrier to entry is complexity. When people learn, their natural inclination is they want black, white information. They want sound bites that they can repeat. But gaining a full understanding of what's behind the concepts, people really struggle with that. And I saw a statistic, I'm going to butcher this, but I remember the rough numbers. It was that 20% of the population has the ability to think independently and think critically. So when you realize that, you're like, whoa, okay. So that kind of makes a bit more sense. And it's useful being able to tell other people that as well, because it kind of red pills them into understanding that, oh, actually, okay, just because everyone thinks this is the case, probably doesn't actually mean that it is, right? So next tweet, I'm rambling. So poor posture can cause musculoskeletal pain, circulatory issues, digestive problems, impaired lung function, nerve compression, spinal misalignment, increased stress, fatigue. Okay, so let's go through all of these. So musculoskeletal pain, yeah, it can cause this. Why can it cause this? Well, two reasons come to mind. So if we ignore the word poor posture and we just think about postures, so think about sitting upright in a chair, slightly leaning forward, right? Gravity is trying to pull your body forwards. What muscles are stopping that from happening? It's the muscles on the other side, your spinal erectors. Sit in this position for 15 to 20 minutes, blood flow, whatever, constant contraction, they're going to start to feel a little bit sore, right? Which is completely normal, but a lot of people freak out when they experience this because they're not used to it, right? Another reason kind of goes back to what I was saying before about forcing yourself into positions. Now, is it a musculoskeletal pain? Not really, it's more of a joint issue. But it's the other main one that I can think of in this example. In terms of musculoskeletal pain, so what actually causes that? Well, really common causes in the population would be muscular deconditioning. Yeah. So if something's not working quite as it should, you might have a limited range, etc. That can cause problems. Posture has zero to do with that. Circulatory issues, yeah, I can see this. Kind of where it says about impingement. Did it say impingement? Nerve compression. Further down, sure. So, you know, you think about the spaces that you have in your joints. You want stuff to be able to kind of move through that freely, if you like. If we talk about circulatory, right, actually you've got blood flow. I suppose you've got impulses from nerves, haven't you? But when you close up that space in the joint, it's going to cause compression, stuff like that. Now, will normal posture be problematic for this? Not really. So the best example I can give you for this, we've spoken a lot about active range, right? So when we first started, we did a hip flexion test. So you lied on your back and you raised your legs in the air with your knee bent to 90 degrees, right? So you kind of lifted your leg up like that, and we saw the angle that you got for hip flexion. Well, that is the range that you want to respect when you squat, right? Now, if you don't respect that range and you go further, which you can, what happens is that space in the joint basically is completely shut off. There's no space in the joint, and you end up getting this forceful experience, if you like, because you don't have any range left. You have the femur kind of hitting into the acetabulum, the hip, right? That's where these problems become much more likely, because you're going beyond forces of gravity. Forces of gravity very rarely are going to cause any problems. When you're doing a 460-pound leg press, then you're going to have problems, right? So it's not black and white, is basically what I'm saying. Impaired lung function, yeah, this does make sense. I would just want him to define exactly what he means by impaired lung function. Now, by not being upright, obviously you don't have an expanded rib cage, and you might be less likely to be able to fill your lungs to the same volume because of that. That's what I would assume by impaired lung function, right? There's nothing else I can really think of. Is there anything chronic there? Probably not. You might have the degree to which you use your lungs, but again, you're not going to be in this position forever, especially when you're exercising, right? And when you're doing that, your lungs are going to experience working to different degrees. Spinal misalignment. Again, what does this mean? Are we talking acute? So when I say acute, I mean right now my spine is misaligned, right? Now it's not. So does he mean this acutely? Because if that's the case, then it's true, but there are no problems behind it. Or does he mean chronically? Of which, if he means chronically, again, there's very, very little reason as to why this would happen. Increased stress. Does he mean physiological stress, or does he mean psychological stress? If he means physiological stress or physical stress, that's true, because it goes back to being forced into a certain position. Or here's another example for you, right? So we've spoken about range of motion being unique. We've all got a certain degree of spinal flexion, so like ab crunches, and spinal extension, right? So let's say that my spinal flexion, let's say hypothetically I can only get to like here, right? This is my end range. If I slouch in a position like this, I'm allowing gravity to pull me down and flex my spine further than what my joints are comfortable doing. That can cause problems, but it's very, very rare for people to have that kind of limitation to the point where it causes issues. Now, the example with the hip, that's much more common, and there's weight involved with that as well. Increased stress, fatigue, I don't see it. Mood changes, yeah, so fatigue, mood changes. So I guess if you want to go really, really deep on this, I suppose the way that you could think of this is that if you're getting discomfort and pain because you're trying to maintain a certain ideal posture, that's going to cause frustration, that's going to cause stress. A side effect of stress could be fatigue, and the stress and the fatigue will change your mood. Low motivation, yeah, so these are kind of you're rolling the snowball down the hill, and it's accumulating these side effects or these deeper effects as you go. And sleep disturbances, I don't agree with that one. I don't. So sleeping, the only way I can think of how posture would relate to sleep, would be a poor sleeping position, which just means you're not comfortable, right? It's like, you know, if I turned off the fan up there or turned the AC off, I wouldn't be able to sleep because it's not ideal conditions. Is there any other way it could cause sleep disturbances? Now we could go down the pain route as well, general pain, etc., which can keep you awake. Very, very common with shoulder issues, for example. But again, that could be a correlation thing, not a causation thing, if the pain has not actually been caused by the postural habits to begin with, right? So here are 5 changes I made and now maintain as habits. So imagine you have a string going through, okay. So I used to do this one a lot, right? So the whole idea of the string kind of being pulled like this, it's a very, very common cue that level 2 trainers use. So when I started my first job, I wasn't even a PT. This was the cue I was using with people before I learned that anatomy was unique and there are all these complexities, right? So if you look at him in this position, you know, he's kind of slouched, I suppose you could call it slouched. And then
that string above my head. I'm
cool. Okay. Now he's in this.
My head straight like that. That's a really nice.
Don't go away. Don't go away. Hang on. Bear with me. Sorry about this. Hang on. There we go. Cool. So when he's in this position, you can actually see he's extended through the spine, and his shoulders are very far back. Well, not everyone can actually get their shoulders this far back, and that extension through the spine, not everyone has. So the mentor that I used to have, Michael, who was in London, he had like no spinal extension whatsoever. So with me on an extension machine, I'd be able to like extend really, really far. For him, like standing upright was his end range, right? So for him doing this test, he would be in his end range where his muscles are really weak, which means they have to work harder to stay in that range, which means it will be more uncomfortable, it will build more fatigue, but he'd also be in something called a closed, packed position as well. And that's where ligaments, etc., are very taut, they're tight. And that alongside muscles being short as well, actually causes discomfort. So that's one thing. There was something else I wanted to mention with this. Yeah. So one of the reasons why I'm really aware of posture, right, is because of tailoring, believe it or not. So you know when you get a fitting and you're told to stand there, right? And they kind of measure you up and all of that sort of stuff. Well, obviously, how you stand affects the compensations that they put in the suit, whether it's padding, whatever. And I remember one of the first pieces I ever had made, wasted money. The reason why was nothing to do with them, it was because of me. It's because I thought that by standing really upright, sticking my chest out, shoulders back, etc., standing tall, I thought the suit would look a lot better. It looked awful. And the reason why is because it didn't fit my anatomy. I was forcing a position that were my end ranges that weren't natural for me, and that caused issues. Goes without saying, I didn't get to wear the suit because it was just uncomfortable. I couldn't maintain that position. Second one, avoid things that invite bad posture. The phone is the worst. Okay, so avoid things that invite bad posture. Again, we need to define what bad posture is, and that hasn't been defined yet. When I have my phone up, I hold it up. Okay, so I'll give you an example of this, right? So I'm on my phone a lot for work, and I'm very often looking down. I never get any neck pain. What would probably shock you even more is how I actually work. So because we're traveling, so I have a tendency, I love putting my feet up, yeah? So it doesn't really matter what I'm doing, where I'm at, I like putting my feet up and kind of relaxing. It enables me to get into flow. What that means is very often when I'm working, I will be slumped in a chair where I'm in extreme flexion. I've got photos I can send you of this. And Claudia's very sneakily taken photos of me when we've been working in different places across the world. I'll be lying on the sofa on my side. My leg will be up against the wall. My torso will be rotated. no issues. So one of the main complaints with posture when it comes to sitting, etc., is that kind of tightness, that discomfort that you experience. And what that usually is it's actually because the way you're sitting in is causing muscles to work against gravity. And I wrote some stuff on this in, I want to say 2022, and I can send this over to you, and I think there are some photos of me on there as well, doing weird stuff posture-wise. But the reason why I don't get discomfort, back pain, etc., when I'm slouching back in chairs is because these muscles aren't working at all. They're relaxing. And because they're relaxing, I'm not getting any kind of tightness, discomfort, etc. Right? I also move around a lot. So that's another thing just to note, that's an unrelated point. Discomfort very often comes from being in one position for a prolonged period of time. I subconsciously move like every 15 minutes just because I fidget. I'm someone who like taps their foot all the time and stuff like that. So it's awkward and potentially embarrassing to be the person holding your phone up like this. Okay. When I bend my head down 60 degrees, I can feel the pressure building in my brain from the lack of blood flow. Well, I mean, I think that's more of a gravity thing, right? And people will probably read this and they'll try it and they'll be like, whoa. So, you know, when I go into this position, firstly, I start to feel tension building up in these muscles. The reason why is because here, they're not being challenged, because gravity, draw a line straight down my head. I wonder if I can, does that work? Cool. So draw a line that goes straight down my head, that it goes through my body, right? So that there's no challenge. As soon as I start to do this, draw a line, you see how that's in front of my body. So there's a moment arm to the neck, which means these guys have to work to kind of hold my head up, right? Does that make sense? In terms of blood flow to the brain, there's something intuitive there about, you know, you think about when you do exercises that are prone, and the same kind of thing happens, but there's no change in neck position. So I see where he's going with this, right? He's probably talking about how it's you're constricting, you know, when he said earlier about circulation, he's probably saying something like that. But when you do what's a good example of this? Hip extension? Generally you get that same head rush. Now, there might be something that I haven't thought of because I haven't really explored this area of things that much. So I could be wrong here, right? But just thinking out loud, that's kind of what I think about. Move every 30 minutes throughout the day. Cool. So I said earlier about subconsciously just wanting to move every 15 minutes. So this is a really cool piece of advice. So take a brisk walk, climb up some stairs, do some stretches. Not good advice. Break out into dance, anything active. So the brisk walk, fantastic. Climb up some stairs, fantastic. Break into a dance. I'm not much of a dancer. You might be, that's fine. That can work as well. Anything active, absolutely fine. So, or switch positions in your chair, right? Leaning on one butt cheek to the other, etc. All of that stuff helps. Now, this is a prime example of what I was saying earlier about how even the perceived best people on the planet get things wrong. So with stretching, stretching is one of the most common things in the fitness industry, and I've been arguing against certain claims for about 10 years now with this. Why? Because there's objective evidence. Right now, the claims when it comes to improving recovery, being effective for injury rehab, reducing injury risk, all of that sort of stuff, the results are as simple as 1 + 1 = 2. So, you know, it's not something that people can argue against. Now, the reason why people still believe these, one is because of the groupthink that we spoke about earlier. Number two is because, one, they either haven't read studies or they don't know how to read studies, because some studies, the control isn't done correctly, certain things aren't monitored that actually change the outcomes of the study, etc. And number three would be ego as well, or camps. So when you think about communities in fitness, a lot of people actually get into fitness, you know, firstly it's because they want to improve their physique or something like that, but they generally stay in for the community, right? That's why things like High Rocks have been so successful. So the thing with a community is they can get quite culty, right? And they more often than not are in support of a very specific protocol or methodology. CrossFit, Poliquin is even a good one. So Poliquin he was an Olympic strength coach. One of the first courses that I went through, and people are kind of hell-bent on his ideas. So they're like, this is the way that it is, can't question it. Most of the stuff I learned in Poliquin I've now kind of disproven. Some brilliant stuff in there, but it just goes to show, I think, when people get so bought into an idea, when that idea is questioned, it then threatens their identity, and that becomes a problem. So if you have a coach who's been coaching for 20 years, they've been telling the clients to stretch for 20 years, and you say to them, hey, did you see all these studies about how, you know, stretching is actually a really poor, ineffective way to improve mobility because it doesn't involve muscle contraction whatsoever, so it doesn't improve function? They're going to experience cognitive dissonance. They're not going to be able to say, oh yeah, no, I didn't, I need to look at that, because it proves what they've been doing for 20 years has been wrong. And I think another point to make with that is that we all tend to put experience on a pedestal without going through that experience with a fine-tooth comb. So what I mean by that is I met guys at my first job, right? So this is kind of a long time ago. I'd met guys who have been training other people for like 10, 20 years. I've got one very specific guy in mind. His name was Lee. Very, very set in his ways, very opinionated, etc. because he'd been doing it for such a long time. But what Lee had essentially been doing is repeating the same 6 months of experience 40 times. So 10, 20 years. I can't remember how long I'd said that he'd been working for. It's one of those. I've been rambling on this video for a long time. But a lot of people, what they do is they get that first 6 months experience, they just keep repeating it. Or they do their PT qualification, which is like a weekend course, which is when education should really start. And they just repeat that thing over and over and over again, you know. Okay, so next one, my physical therapist. Oh, this will be juicy. My physical therapist coached me on these 2 exercises to strengthen posture muscles. Okay. So this is completely bogus. So the idea, this point really frustrates me. So you can't pull muscles, you can't pull your skeleton in and out of alignment by strong and weak muscles. So this point here tells me straight away his PT has no fucking idea what they're talking about. Yeah, so let me read this before I'm harsh about it. So keep your elbows back, shoulders position, hand weight. Let's see the exercise. What's the exercise?
It's highly technical, and it took me a long time to get this right. Is you want to have your elbows back, your shoulders like this position, weights in your hand. You want to bring your shoulder.
So point number 1. Yeah, so strengthening muscles don't change your posture. If that was true, so let's think about this for a second, right? So my anterior delt, I'll use this arm. So this is my anterior delt, right? And when it shortens, my arm goes up. When it lengthens, my arm goes down. It doesn't matter how strong this muscle gets, I control where my arm goes, yeah? Because I control the tension of the muscle. So I can lift it up short and I can drop it, lengthen the muscle. Under no circumstances will I ever be able to strengthen this muscle so much that I walk around like this permanently. It's physiologically just impossible to do, right? That's the argument. Like, I can go deeper if you want me to on that one. We've probably spoken about this before, right? So I'm responding to this thread as if, you know, someone hasn't gone through all the stuff that we've gone through. But this is a very, very misleading point because you can't strengthen muscles. Now, we've spoken, I believe, about upper cross and lower cross syndrome. So what that basically means, it's the idea of weak and tight muscles, right? So weak and tight muscles, firstly, it should be weak and strong, right? For some reason, the tight has been switched out or put in place instead. But upper cross and lower cross have never been scientifically validated. They were terms that gained popularity and they stayed in place, despite the fact that all evidence actually fights against the claims that those things exist, yeah. The movement itself, so this will be unrelated because that's the end of the argument. You just can't change posture. Now, you can improve your awareness, your bodily awareness, which then affects how you stand, etc. But it has nothing to do with muscle tension. It has nothing to do with strength, etc. Right? So being specific to this point, there's no resistance in this movement. So if you think about improving joint function, muscle function, step one is always to improve range. And the reason why is because you tend to lose range in the short and long positions. So if I'm doing a bicep curl, that's at the top, it's at the very bottom. You're not going to lose it in the very bottom, right? But for other joints, that will make sense. So what you do is you improve the range with lighter weights, maybe isometrics. We did some of this stuff when I was in Bahrain with you. After that, you load the body. So, longevity and very low injury risk movement is built through doing heavy shit in end ranges. That's basically how, it's oversimplified, but that's essentially what you do. So when you see these kinds of exercises and when you see the functional people, so if you just give me a second, functional people like this online who are telling you to do things like this for balance. This is not how you train balance, by the way. You train balance by improving output of individual muscles, and then this is the skill part. You need the output part as well. This is a bit of a tangent, right? But this body weight stuff, it's not really going to improve body function. People just buy into it because it looks functional. It looks like the thing people want to get better at, but that's not actually how things work. You have the off season, you have you know how all of this stuff works, right? The end goal, training for the end goal, rarely actually looks like the end goal. Yeah. Let's go back. Cool. Okay. Exercise 2. What's that? I'll do this. Be very patient. Watch the demo. Yeah. So these exercises they're not going to drive much change or adaptation because you need resistance to do so. If you're using your hand against your head, very, very, very classic, common PT approach is to do these low intensity exercises. Right, I'm just going to plug my laptop in because it's dying, near dying. Does that work? No, okay, we'll run with it. So they'll do these low intensity exercises. People will start to feel better in everyday life. Then they go back to more intense stuff. They get hurt again. The reason why is because the exercises make them feel like they're making progress because they're not in pain anymore, because they're not doing the stuff that caused the pain in the first place. But then when they go back to do the things, the exercises that they've done, because they're so low intensity, they're either body weight stuff or very light bands or very light dumbbells, the stuff hasn't been challenging enough to drive real adaptation or change to improve that individual's capabilities or capacity or tolerance to do that harder stuff, right? Expect initial soreness as these neglected muscles are engaged. Yeah. You'll find, I'm being mindful here, right? Because all of this has all been very negative, but the initial soreness, neglected muscles, it depends on who we're talking about. If you could argue that if you're actually doing this a lot of the time, they're actually not neglected, they're working a lot. You'll find that it takes a lot of muscle to maintain proper posture. Again, training those muscles won't improve your posture. They just won't. Improving my posture has been one of the most important things I've done in my wellness efforts at Blueprint. Posture carries a profound psychological weight. When you stand tall, you exude. Yeah, so this is true, right? And it's really, really interesting, and it's something that people don't really think about with posture. So when you, I don't know exactly how your meetings work, right? Really random thing to say, but let's say that you walked into a boardroom or something, and you walked in slouched shoulders, etc., looking at the floor. People are going to get a certain perception of you. You're going to feel a certain way. If you walk in standing tall, looking up, maintaining eye contact with people, they'll get a very different perception of you, right? So that idea of exuding confidence, that's 100% legit. But there's not really much else to say on that, to be honest. I mean, yeah, that's. Now he's tying it into the benefits, right? So he's saying why it's been beneficial. So improving your posture doesn't just benefit you; it creates a ripple effect that encourages those around you to be mindful of their own posture as well. Okay, yeah. So this can be good or bad, and the reason why I say that is because if you think that posture should be standardized, like this guy or a lot of other people, you can actually get other people hurt. So another example of this, I'll go back to the squat example because it's such a common one. No, I won't. I'll go to bench. So what you'll see a lot on the Twitter timeline, or X, whatever, you'll see a lot of fitness coaches that have been doing this stuff for like 10 years, and you'll see this a lot. They'll say, it's not a full rep if you haven't done bar to chest. So for those who can actually do bar to chest because it fits their anatomy, it's not a problem. What about those who can't? Destroys their shoulders over the long run. Same thing with squats, right? So some people can literally squat to the point where their calves are touching their hamstrings, and it's arse to grass, right? Really, really, really deep. Other people, because of their torso length, I mean, let me see if I can quickly show you this. If I go on, I know this is a really long video. I hope you find it useful, and I hope there's not too much waffle here. So if we go on to personaltraining.com, yeah, so foldability and proportions. Let's see if he goes through this. So basically, yeah. So depending on the length of this, the femur, the tibia, and the torso, it's actually going to affect how you fold up, right? So does he move this stuff around much? Yeah. I think he does. No, maybe not. Yeah, so anyway, that stuff will basically affect how deep you can squat. And if you can only get to 90 degrees of hip flexion and you do arse to grass, you're going to destroy your labrums. Like irreversible damage, hip damage, etc. I had a client who went through this. Spent a fortune on... So he tore both of his labrums playing rugby. He saw a bunch of people, spent loads of money, didn't work. And it turned out it was a anatomy problem. It's because he'd been doing things that violated his anatomy. So, you know, without weight, could it cause a little bit of discomfort if someone tells you to do something that actually doesn't fit your body? Yeah, that might be a bit of discomfort. It's not going to destroy your life. The problem comes when you try and load that stuff. Yeah, so it's more dangerous when it's about exercise design, exercise execution, etc., as opposed to posture. So in my family, whenever someone spots another slouching, we make a zip sound. Instantly the person straightens up, often without needing to say a word. I don't really have a lot to comment on that bit. Okay, and then there's a thing. Okay. Yeah, anyways, man, I hope this is useful. I know you're going to send me some questions. I don't know if you watched this whole video or not, but... You know, there's a lot of confusion out there, right? And a big problem with social media, it's one of the things I've really struggled with, actually, and it's why I'm writing less long form stuff. You get a lot of absolutes, and you get a lot of black and white thinking. And, you know, when you dive deeper into things, or you move further up the kind of the knowledge food chain, if you like, which you'll be aware of because you're very knowledgeable on fitness and training, things are very rarely black and white, right? So when I say that, because I'm contradicting myself here, depending on how you frame it, you know, saying that anatomy is unique, that's a black and white statement. But the execution of that is full of nuance, right? So, yeah. Anyway, my brain's frying now, so I hope this is useful. Let me know if you've got any questions.